Hello, I'm Richard Ridge for BroadwayWorld. I'm here with the terrific ensemble cast of Roundabout Theatre Company's new production of Simon Gray's The Common Pursuit, directed by Moises Kaufman, running here at the Laura Pels through July 29th. I want to go back to the beginning. How many of you knew the play before you auditioned, and what was it specifically that wanted you to do the show?
Did anyone know it?
I did.
I'd never heard of it before.
I did. They actually did it. My class did it at drama school.
Did you?
Yeah, I wasn't in it. I was doing Three Sisters, but my wife was in it, and so I ran lines for all the Marigold stuff.
You didn't tell me that.
Who was she in it?
She was Nick, and then they switched the casting around, and they figured out.
Makes sense.
Right. No, so I knew half of the guys, but I couldn't remember who was sleeping with who and who was.
So what was it that attracted each of you to want to do the show?
I'm an Anglophile, so anything that has the Union Jack on it, I love. But it's a compelling piece. It's not an obvious piece, and I like that you have to work a little bit to get it, but it really resonates with me. And when I found out the cast list, it was just a dream come true.
And for the gentlemen?
I love that it's a group of similarly aged folks. It's rare that you get to do a play with a bunch of people your age when you're after in school, I think. And it's kind of a unique experience to be. It feels like a locker room environment. Everybody's got the same basic life experience. And it can be informative to do, multi-generational stuff as well, but it's rare that you get to do it with a bunch of your peers.
Yeah, I also think, adding on to that, it's a unique opportunity also to play a character that spans, what we span in this play, which is about 15, 20 years almost.
Yeah.
And to be able to age a relationship over that course of time is you don't get to do that very often. I think it's a really rare experience to be able to chart someone's life over a very formative part of their career and their relationship with other people who are close to them.
Because I just love the structure of the play, because it's 4 scenes and an epilogue.
Right.
And 20 years sort of span your lives, which I think is fascinating.
I told him it was going to be called The Common Pursuit. He liked that. He's a great admirer of Leavers, though of course he has his reservations. But he said it would establish what our critical standards were. That we were serious, in other words. So, he's already on our side, you see. Marigold, have you been introduced to Humphry Taylor, whose poems I told you about? Marigold Watson.
Hello.
And, of course, you've already met, I'm terribly sorry.
Martin Musgrove.
Who's offered to take over the advertising business, etc.
All the really boring stuff, in fact, is my level.
Right, let's get started.
So I want to talk about character traits. I love the way these characters are written in this play. They have a specific style, a specific look, and the individual tics that you all have. So take me to the rehearsal process. You're also wonderful at what you do. So were some of these character traits easier or harder for some of you to find?
There's actually a funny anecdote from Simon Gray's journal about putting the show on for the first time. And he, at one point, he goes through and kind of talks about what his experience is as they're going through the rehearsal process. And
it should be said that he's a huge smoker. Simon Gray was
Simon Gray's a huge smoker
And
drinker too. And there's a lot of that that goes on throughout the course of our play, which is exciting. Makes for good theater. But he, at one point during the rehearsal process, complained to Harold Pinter, who was directing that production. He said, the character playing Nick is coughing all the time, like we need to reel him in because he's really getting out of control. And Harold Pinter said, actually he's coughing everywhere you told him to cough. You've written this monster of a coughing machine. So that was built in, and it's always a treat as an actor to get something like that. That gives you lots of comic possibilities, but also gives you something that informs your character and who the person is, and in this case, a very kind of self-destructive spiral that you get to see throughout the course of the play.
I think Tim has a lot of tics. I wouldn't say maybe
I
tics
hadn't
is
noticed
the wrong
any.
word. Not in real life, on stage.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Well, with Humphry, he was fun to develop because I felt like I could use real broad strokes in the beginning. A lot of the other characters spend some time talking about him, and that he's sort of the intellectual among the intellectuals, and so it was interesting for me because in this group I am definitely the intellectual. So it was fun. No, in all honesty, I think each of the characters had a nice sort of like place to begin, a sort of cornerstone, and for Humphry it certainly has been a lot of fun to explore, making a real person to back up all of the accolades that the other characters seem to give him.
So is it all in the words? Is it in the script? Each of the characters? The development of how you should be?
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I was remembering from the rehearsal process how interesting it was right at the end of rehearsal when you changed that moment of how you were dealing with him in that first conversation about it was an intellectual discussion, and then you said this isn't working, and I was thinking this isn't working. It's not necessarily in the words. That was a choice that you found. It wasn't a cornerstone of you, but it was really interesting.
I think each character is given specific traits that they can build from. Peter's the adulterer, Humphry is the intellect, and so these are sort of foundations that you can build and sketch around. But the rest is kind of up to us, and I think that's one of the great things about having a play where it's such an ensemble piece, is that we do find that stuff together. And this moment that Josh was just referring to, didn't find it until we had done it together and found out what made it work for both of us in the context of the scene and in the context of the whole arc of the play.
I think this play is also written, and a lot of things are really left open to interpretation and very vague. And we have a lot of audience members coming up asking us after the show, was this person this? Was this actually happening? When did this begin? When did this relationship start? And I didn't see that moment happen, and we didn't see that on stage. How did he fall in love with her? And the answer is, it's really kind of whatever you think. We have our own ideas when we came to it together, but I think it's what's kind of beautiful about this particular script is that so much of it really is kind of satisfying in that unsatisfying way that you really come to it yourself.
Well, it's ambiguous.
Yeah.
It's not going to hit you over the head with it, and I love that. I love that about theater. I love that we're doing this play, and probably for every audience member, there's going to be a different take on it. And they're all valid, unless they just fell asleep.
Some are not valid.
Well, some of them are more valid than others.
Some have not been valid. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your director. You're one of the finest directors for this show. I mean, I've known Moises for quite a while, and I'm fascinated about how the whole rehearsal process is and what it's been like working with him.
I'll say right off, I think Moises has done an amazing thing where he's fostered this sense of family among us and a sense of friend, a long-standing deep friendship from the very get-go. And I think it's that he actually had a big hand in doing that in terms of the people that he chose that were right for this production, and also the kind of environment that he fosters in the room that is very playful and fun and loose and serious when it needs to be serious, but very loving and nurturing as well. So I think that is a huge feat in terms of being able to bring together people who haven't really worked together before and make it feel like a close group of friends, and make it feel like an environment where we can all feel comfortable being like in each other's business as much as we have to be in this play, and also get along off stage too, well, for the most part.
Hey.
I think it was really interesting, actually, just bouncing off that. One thing that I noticed was that everybody was in the room almost all the time.
Yeah.
It's pretty unusual. There are long stretches of the play where everybody is off stage. I particularly spend a lot of time sitting around watching everybody else work, which is kind of unusual and can be frustrating. You're like, when am I going to get up there? But I think it was an intentional attempt to really involve everybody in every part of the process, and I think it really paid a pretty large benefit in the friendship we developed. So.
And as a cast, I think we're all very good with text. Like this group of actors, we tend to really get along with text. And the great thing about Moises, this is the second time that I've worked with him, Lucas and I worked with him before, is he's exquisite with the visual world, and that's for me, really sets him apart. So we'll be doing a scene, and he'll go, "Okay, do it again, but put your hand on the chair." And and go, what does that have to do with what I'm saying? And then we'll do the scene again. You put your hand on the chair, and all of a sudden the character shifts and your body shifts, and all of a sudden the scene works because the energies shifted between, and it was just a physical adjustment that made the text work and made the character work. And actually, a lot of the physical or the character stuff that didn't come from the text came from Moises, going, at this moment of revelation, I think it might be nice to see Martin with a raincoat and the suitcase. And that image, that tells the character, that tells where the character is through just looking at him. And that was just a wonderful thing that he brought every day.
The costumes, it's so stylized, this piece. Does that help? Is that like the last factor that sets you on your path to a character?
It certainly brings things into focus. I'd say the set equally so, and the sound and all of that. But that's helped with the trajectory of things. Clint's designs started off quite vibrant for everyone in color, and then suddenly we all get quite muted over the course of the years.
And heavier.
And heavier, yeah. It becomes more based in reality, or at least in, I don't know, it tracks the loss of idealism at least a little bit. And that's slightly tragic. I mean, you don't think about that when you're wearing your black coat, but hopefully subconsciously the audience is picking up on something like that.
You began to talk about the text here. Were you all off book early on? How do you work in the rehearsal room? There's so many words to this play. I mean, it's so beautifully written.
I think within the first 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
One complication to that is that we actually worked from a couple of different scripts. There was a London version and an American version that they adapted when they came over here. And up until pretty late in the rehearsal process, we were combining the two texts and sort of picking and choosing a few lines. The American version was the basic one, but then we would add and subtract a few lines from the other version that we thought might inform the play a little bit. So I think that made it a little bit more difficult to get off book because the book was constantly changing, but it ended up, I think, really working out for the best.
Yep.
Were they drastic scenes?
There were some pretty drastic differences. I mean, there were big chunks that had been cut out of the British version that were in the American version, and vice versa. Just in terms of the way things were worded, in the way that changed the way points were made sometimes.
Yeah, my character was from Edinburgh in one version,
Right.
from Exeter in another. So that actually changed the accent that I did.
And there's also a lot of things in the London script that were just hitting the nail on the head. And the New York script is much more ambiguous and gives the audience a lot more power of having to listen and decide and talk about it afterwards. So it was good for us to go read the London one and go, oh, that's what was intended, or that what happened backstage, that offstage, and then bring that to the New York script.
Because you started to talk about the diary, because Simon Gray wrote that diary, which I think is fascinating.
Fantastic.
Did you all read it?
I think we all touched on it.
I read the first couple chapters. In the London version, actually, Peter's character is much smaller, and the rehearsal process was detailed in a way that I just didn't want to read it, to be honest. I wanted to find it in the room. I didn't want to have somebody else tell me how they did it. That's
Whereas I think
not to say that it wasn't helpful or couldn't have been helpful. But
it so rarely happens that you get to peek into the mind of the playwright when they're first putting on a play. I mean, that's unless you're actually there for the very first production. You hear about these productions that take place, so we got to actually look into Simon Gray's mind. And one of the most delightful things for me was just to find out how neurotic the man was. And I mean, he's as self-deprecating as can be. He's as nervous as an actor is typically. So that was really fun to have a simpatico with him. And I wish he were still alive because it would have been really great to have him in the room, but I feel like we were kind of graced with his presence in that sense. Just having his words with us was a lot of fun.
What I can't work out is why.
Why what?
Why you're lying, Nicholas? Your motive? Or are you just keeping in practice?
You don't think by any chance that he's, sold Snakes and Ladders? To somebody else, I mean.
To Vogue, of course.
What?
Nicholas has sold it to Vogue. Well done, Mark.
Yes, well, actually, what happened was that I sent a copy to my agent.
The ashes of your copy, you mean? You burnt them, remember, along with the rest of your life's work.
Accents. Did you have to use them at the audition, or you all have these beautiful accents you work in the show? How did you handle them? How did you find them?
We had a voice coach, accent coach, Deb Hecht, who came in and coached with us a little bit. But by and large, we all are doing the accents that we came in with. I was actually lucky. I was the audition reader, so I got to audition with a lot of the people that ended up making it in. And they're all doing exactly what they did in the audition. I'm kidding again.
Were they hard to find? I mean, are accents easy for some of you?
I think, you know, you have to, you do have to have an ear for it. You have to be able to be a bit of a mimic, but it goes beyond that. If you're only imitating somebody else's pattern of speech, I don't think you end up doing a very good job on the acting end of things. So there is a little bit, I think, of almost musical ability that you need in order to do an accent well. But everybody here, I think, does them really well. So it's nice, especially I think it's easy when the people around you are doing the accents, to be able to sort of listen and check in and sort of all be of the same world, I think is a lot easier when everyone's doing them well. And I'm lucky in that everybody does them well here.
Does it ever shift in rehearsal, like you're listening to someone else's accent and you pick up on theirs and it's not where your character is from? Has it ever happened?
Honestly, we've all maintained a pretty, we're trying to do a pretty standard English accent, the RP. So it's helpful that we all are from the same world. And honestly, their accent, in my experience, is that when they get together in groups, they want to sound alike to kind of eradicate any class distinctions or background and that kind of thing, especially for in such an intellectual world as Cambridge. At least then, I think they all strived, I mean, of course I'm generalizing, but they strived for a common sound. And that was quite an intellectual sound.
We did have a week where Humphry was actually from Edinburgh. And so Tim literally walked in and Moises said, try the accent, and tried doing it in Scottish. And Tim did it.
Yeah.
Like without
Unbeknownst to anybody else on stage.
Well, so we did a full run with all of a sudden Humphrey's Scottish, and then all of a sudden Peter was Scottish. Because we weren't used to having such a strong different dialect in the room, and all of a sudden, you know, it's bleeding all over. But the fact that you did that with 5 minutes notice was incredible, and then that also illuminated parts of the character and parts of the play. And then ultimately we went back to the RP, but
yeah, it was a great exercise
Mm-hmm.
to sort of to try on a character and do the things that he does with you know, the voice coming from a different place in the body and sort of landing in a different way. So
and again, that's Moises. He's like, let's try something new, and we did. And that's, you're in a safe place in the rehearsal room, and you can really say, I want to try this, and he would let you. And he said, this might not work, but try this, and we would, and that doesn't always happen. A lot of times you'll work with a director who has such an iron-fisted idea about what they want the play to look like, and Moises really, you know, if we wanted to try something, he was more than willing. He wanted us to try different things, and that's really nice.
It looks like he's given you the freedom you can see in all your performances. That you had a director like that. You were the only woman in the group.
Yeah.
So what is this like with this whole bunch of boys?
It's
I
horrible.
can answer that.
No, he can't. He can't answer it. It's horrible. I'm dying little deaths every day. No, it's a ball. I was basically raised to be a boy. I wanted to be a football player when I was 5. So I guess being around
This is new information.
a bunch of dudes is not a bad thing for me.
So these are like your new brothers.
Exactly. Right, boys?
That's right, Kiki. That's right, Kiki. No, she comes into our dressing room. She spends a lot of time in our dressing room.
Mm-hmm, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find most of the inappropriate behavior begins with Kristen. Yeah, really,
It's
we're
her.
pretty well-behaved gentlemen. We sit around and we discuss civilized things.
That is
and then
not
she
true.
comes in and ruins the mood.
No, it's
Yeah,
not
and
true. I
brings
can't tell you.
Brings the discussion
what they
down
say.
about 5 notches intellectually.
Or
Who's the biggest prankster?
Prankster?
Take your
Is there
pick.
one?
I mean,
Depends. It depends how the prank is pranking. Tim's had a couple doozies. Tim and Kiki have a rivalry, actually.
I wouldn't classify it that way. Friendship.
There
Yes,
were some
friendship.
awards given, and I won't say
Backstage
who,
awards.
but someone got first prize and someone got third prize. and someone was not too happy about that, right, Tim?
We like to keep things lively backstage, is the sum of, I think, what we're all trying to say. So we do. We have a lot of fun. I would say Jacob is probably the biggest jokester or prankster.
So it's
But
the
then
quiet
Lucas
ones.
is
Yeah,
always
it's always the
funny.
quiet ones.
Yeah.
Yes.
The really quiet ones.
On the record, I have no idea what you're talking about. I think we're actually all pretty much guilty of. We're all in it together, and I think that started on the first day of rehearsal, and it went through.
It's Moises. It's his fault.
Yes.
If he were more serious and more focused.
He would have cast different people.
But we're
Serious actors.
Yes.
Yeah.
My final question for you is, what's been the best part of the experience? You're coming into the end of the run. What's been the best part of the experience for you all?
That's hard for me to parse, honestly, because I feel like in some ways I've waited my whole career for a job like this, where I have fun with everybody that I work with, and we work on a script that we can believe in, and everybody has a part that they can invest themselves in at a theater that supports you, with an audience who came to have a good time and listen. So I will not answer your question, I guess, because the whole thing has been really a joy and a lot of fun the whole time.
Anybody else want to add?
Well put.
I don't think, I can't add anything to that.
I'll just say every night when the lights go down, this is really silly, but I say a little thank you that I get to do this. It's just, every day is a real joy to come to my job.
She also dances before that.
You don't need to tell them
Dances
that.
backstage.
And this is a big deal for you because you've moved from you're from the television world. You're spending a lot of time out there. Big decision to come here and do this, right?
Yeah. But in November of last year, I finally, I've been meaning to do it for about 10 years, and finally managed to actually make that move. So yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, but strangely enough, it's exactly the same, I think, as what Tim said. This is sort of something I've been waiting for my entire career to do, something like this. So really every moment has been amazing and terrifying also. I had a lot of catching up to do. This group is most incredible, the most talented people I've ever worked with. Definitely the smartest as well.
That's
no
true.
offense to everyone else I've ever worked with.
You, Jennifer?
True.
I agree that we are probably the most talented. No, it's just really nice to get along with everyone who you work with, which, it doesn't always happen. I mean, it doesn't always feel so kind of easy. I think this has felt like a real easy group to be around and to create a play with. So it's nice when your job involves that kind of joy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to add something into that?
Well, yeah, I would say that's the whole spectrum. I mean, there is a lot of play and a lot of fun backstage, but whenever there's a long run, there's ups and downs in life, and I think all of us have come in having a rough day, and it's been okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not just fun backstage, it's family, and when we have to take care of one of us during a performance, that happens too. And the fact that that's going on, as well as the great fun that we have, is really the magic for me coming in every day. So.
Well, I thank you all. I think you're one of the finest ensembles in New York. So
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this. And in an hour.
Let's always do this.
Let's always do this.